Mr. Omari Hardwick. What's up, sir?
Thank you, brother, for having me. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. So listen, I'm excited for this album because I love spoken word albums and I love Gil Scott-Heron. And I know for a while you were working on trying to get the Gil Scott-Heron biopic going. So
Yes.
I'm just curious, Gil Scott-Heron, this spoken word album, were you inspired by him to really put this out there?
Um, I guess I'm always, inspired by him. I don't know if I would specifically say that he was inciting, the riot of me putting it out, but I would definitely say he incited the riot inside of me called a poet. And the words that perhaps, I realized, I recognized at a very young age that I was birthed with being able to play with, you know what I mean? Like they came to me, and I associated them with people like Gil Scott for sure. Stevie Wonder to me, for him to be literally blind, but to be so insightful, perhaps italicized as SIGHT, in that word. There were people, obviously I was very musical in terms of growing up in the South and, growing up in a Black community and having a mom and a pop who, not like Jay-Z, but similarly rocked out with their own records. He states that his mother had her records and his father, or his mother, excuse me, had her records and his father had his, but mine they sort of combined their records together, and it landed me on people like Donny Hathaway to Stevie to the Bee Gees all the way to the Beatles, back over to Jeffrey Osborne. And then when hip hop hit, I guess the historian that I am, I was on this big voyage or quest to figure out the birth of hip hop. Like I was big on African Bambaataa and all the way to Bahamadia, LL in between, Rakim, Chuck D, Big Daddy Kane was huge for me. But then I always was like, well, what is the base of that? How do we transition from blues and jazz and all this shit mom and pops were teaching me over into hip hop? And I started to realize that the bridge of sorts was none other than the late, great, incomparable Gil Scott-Heron, to answer your question. But there's so much music, I just kind of decided, I guess, in this season, I need to put it out. I could hear God going, you made 400 some songs, and you need to just really put it out because I blessed you with this gift, and here you are sitting on it. And so that, along with great friends and loved ones who said, Omari, can the world and the culture please hear the music? So I think this is just simply the time that I couldn't say anything back to the request of folks to have it put out. But I hope that Gil is smiling.
Hold up. Did you mention Bahamadia?
Yeah, she was huge for me, bro.
Oh, I love her.
Was she huge for you?
Yeah, no one really talks about her like they should. She doesn't get her flowers like she should. She was she is really, really incredibly talented. She's one of my favorite MCs. And when I say it, folks are like Bahamadia. I'm like,
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. She was so much for me. And it's good coffee. I think you can put it over there. Yeah. Thank you. How you doing, my brother? Good. Good. So I'm here, in Vancouver, and it's a welcome back for me. And I'll just make the two symbolic. It's a welcome back for me because my first TV gig was here, respectively TNT's Saved. And I remember doing an interview here, and then I came back to do 18, but produced by the late great Tony Scott. But I was doing an interview here in 05, 06, somewhere in that window. And I remember this gentleman saying, Omari, you are a throwback. And now he's saying that to me at, younger than Michael B. Jordan's present age. I was younger than that. And for him to say that, it did a lot for me. And I realized how close and connected I was to my grandparents, not just my parents, but also my grandfolks. All four were still living up to season 3 of Power, which is pretty amazing, all four. But, 17, 15, what so years ago, he said I was an old soul and a throwback. And I kind of thought about it. And now it's full circle for me to say Bahamadia and for you to activate your response the way that you did, or to show excitement. Because to be honest with you, I've often felt, misunderstood or sort of didn't know where to fit in. You know what I mean? Very much a high level athlete and then a poet. And there's an oddity in that, the juxtaposition of which, now, of course, with the younger generation, you have to remind them that we were allowed, or those that our grandparents and parents looked up to, you and me included, we were allowed to to celebrate somebody's uniqueness and their difference. And even if it was color, black or brown, that was a good thing. And the younger generation, man, who absolutely is my fan base and I'm endeared to forever, I have to stop along the road and along the journey and remind some of them it's okay to do everything that you think you can do, or even stuff you don't think you can do. Try it and see where it falls. And so when I bring up names specifically like a Bahamadia, and then you react the way you do, I wish that more people did, because it would, full circle go back to that moment where I was interviewed here in Vancouver and the person said, you're a throwback, because we need more of that. And we need more people understanding what made throwbacks. Literally at this point, she's a throwback. What made them so unique and so gifted?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I try and not be, how can I say this? I try not be too judgmental or whatever. I'm 44 years old. I'm a grown man, so I grew up
you and me, grown ass man.
Yeah, grown man.
Don't be letting them call you delicious though, but a grown ass
man. But I wish there was a bit more diversity in our music. Like there was some, pop, hip hop, R&B when you and I growing up, but you still had some really hardcore hip hop, some stone cold singers.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I feel like I don't see that right now. I just, you still had a Whitney next to a Van 86, you know what I mean? But you don't see that anymore. I love Van. I love Whitney.
Of course, you can't not love Whitney. She's pervasively there. I remember being at her funeral, and the rest of the cast of Sparkle was at her funeral, and her mom said that an angel visited her at some point and said, your daughter will be here not very long. They called her Nippy or whatever, and she was here for 50 some years, and so was Michael Jackson, and so was Prince, and like, we were all a part of the play in those people not being on earth anymore, because they gave us so much, and sometimes you wonder what we gave them. I feel fortunate that I could give her love in the flesh and personally being a castmate of hers, but I think about Michael Jackson and just probably one of the most top 5 gifted people God ever constructed, and how much did we give him back? I mean, we gave him a lot of money, obviously, but people, I remember leaving the church as a kid and always turning to moms and saying, who's praying for the pastor after they pray for everybody? I remember feeling that way. Like, it's got to be quid pro quo. It's got to be something for something. And we're not teaching enough of that, And so there are hip hop artists that are giving us, and hopefully I'm giving them something right now and naming, the shorter list of the Kendricks and the, obviously J. Cole and who's a friend of mine, and there are young people that people don't know yet. There's a guy named King Dreams who I just think is incredible. There's a MC named Trans Lee who signed the Grand Hustle T.I.'s label, who's a friend of mine, and you might know Trans Lee, but super gifted MCs out there that are just not necessarily getting the same play, because in reality, monetization doesn't always connect to art and aesthetic. It just doesn't. So we're trying to figure it out. And I think the music industry is in a retrograde, so to speak. And so the same way that cool ass new sneakers were the same cool ass old sneakers we wore, you and I got to imagine and be hopeful. I got to be glass half full that that there will become that moment where vintage is cool again, and the real thoroughbred gifted folk, their words are able to be heard. But thank God for the MCs. I totally agree in this space. My brother Dave East, like there's some lyrical beasts out there. Nas wouldn't have tapped him if he didn't feel it. And obviously Nas is top 5 to ever do it. So we'll see what happens from here out. But it's all poetic, which is what Wyclef always reminded me. And so did Big Daddy Kane. Like, it's poetry. Don't run from claiming yourself to be hip hop centered because you grew up in poetry more, or you had a poetic bend to your hip hop mentality. And so those guys did a lot for me. The Big Daddy Kanes, the Davies, the Snoops, and absolutely Wyclef and Rakim. I mean, the greats really kind of threw their arms around me. And I think it's because they're so freaking intrinsically connected to poetry, and the base of it all being that, back to the point you made about Gil Scott-Heron.